Hi, Dustin here. Welcome to Wrapping Spoons. Here are two wrapped spoons. They are wrapped with fish line. The reason they are wrapped is because they have been broken or are naturally cracked. And sometimes the wrap is needed physically to strengthen them, and other times it is only needed artistically to recognize the fact that I, the spoon maker, have noticed that they are cracked and still want to sell them to you. I do all my wrapping mostly with fish line and mostly with woven nylon or Dacron bait casting line, which is not so common anymore, and mostly I buy it at the flea market. Sometimes I have to buy the reel along with the line, and sometimes I get to buy the line off the reel, in which case the most convenient thing to wrap it on is a handy VHS tape, which don't cost anything these days. So here's a spoon I'm working on, and here is the vestige of the crack, which may or may not need physical wrapping, but certainly needs artistic wrapping. And here I have begun. Here is the line, which in this case is on the reel, and I've brought it up to a hook, and I've tied a loop in it with 3 or 4 turns around before going through, so that I can hopefully untie the knot without damaging the line and not waste what I don't use. Then what I've done is I have stabilized the line far away from where I am going to wrap to get started. And this has been wrapped around and crossed over in a few times and sealed with a rubber band. So now I'm going to begin wrapping. And to wrap, we need to stretch, because the wrap needs to be under pressure. I wonder about this line. It seems, okay, you see me moving this spoon? Can you see this spoon as I move it? This line is, maybe you can even hear it, this line is under tension, and as I pull it back 4 inches, it's still under tension. So all of this is stretch. And now I'm going to wrap it down to the point where I wish to begin. And I think I wish to begin, notice I've chosen an interesting color of line. This is one reason to have a lot. I think probably I wish to begin just about here. So now, notice my belt. I have a tool belt, because when I wrap, I'm pulling myself in, I'm moving, so I need to have my tools with me. And one of my tools is this little piece of, you can see it against my shirt here, this little piece of 30-pound test monofilament. And I'm going to introduce this piece of monofilament right here to my line. This is a tricky part, but you get to try and try and try, and after a while you learn. Things get easier as you go, and it's called experience and skill and that kind of thing. So there I am, and here I have introduced, I'll slide it out for you one more time, you can see it there, and I have introduced it to the line, and I'm trapping it here. It's in there. And now I'm going to wrap over it like that. And now my wrappings are going to be very close and very tight. And you can probably see now Not bad. So the question is, how many wraps will I make before I attempt to pull this piece of line through underneath them? Every wrap is putting more pressure on that monofilament, and at some point, of course, the monofilament will not be, I will not be able to pull the monofilament through. It would break. So I have to, but the greater number of wraps that I pull the monofilament through, the better will be anchored this end of the wrap. There are, of course, 2 ends of each wrap, and you will see that. So if you don't understand what's going on yet, relax, because it will become quite obvious. So here are, what, 7 or 8 wraps? And I'm probably going to go to about 12. You don't need to count them. It's just a feeling. Will I be able to pull this through? And is this enough pressure to hold the end so the wrap will last forever? And I'm going to do one more. All right. I'm going to be conservative. I want this to be successful. One more. Not that conservative. And there's one more. Now I'm getting scary, and now I'm going to stop. Okay, here we are. Now what I'm going to do is, you see that little space right there. Let me get a pointer here. You see that little space right there between this line, and you see that little bit of monofilament. I'm going to pull on these 2 ends of the monofilament and close that space and hold this piece of line tight so that it cannot move, like this. Maybe I can do it by hand. Maybe I will need pliers. There we go. Okay, now do you see where that's held tightly? Now, whereas I still must keep the spoon in tension with the line, I can now remove my rubber bands and unwrap my end, if I'm lucky. Oh, maybe I can't unwrap my end. I'll cut it and cut my end. This is all going to be scrap anyway, and remove it. And this is throwaway. Here we are on scrap. Now what I want to do is I want to cut just enough off of here, like about where my thumbnail is there, to pull this through and not have too much extra laying on. And here, notice my tool belt, I am carrying scissors, because I might not be able to reach them, because I don't know where I'll be, because the line controls. Let's cut it right about here, because the line controls, and now I need to pull this line through underneath all these wraps. To do that, I need my pliers. So I get a hold of my monofilament with my pliers, and I wrap the pliers tightly because I'm going to use them to pull with. And here I go. Perfect. So I have pulled this line through underneath, and now this end of my wrap is tight. And now I may continue to the other end of my beautiful purple wrap. And now I begin to think about how far up I want to wrap it. It's an interesting thing about wrapping. It's one of the oldest, I'm only guessing, one of the oldest techniques of mankind, humankind these days, of course. And yet it is still the best because it puts very impressive pressure on wood. I can remember when I was a kid, and we all of us kids went to the library. What did we look at the library? These big books on the history of weapons, right? The ballista and the trebuchet and all that stuff, you know, the catapult. And I can remember there was a page that was all about the Asiatic composite bow, B-O-W, archer's bow, used by the Genghis Khan and those guys. And it was all made up of pieces of bone, and I think bone and sinew and stuff, and it was all wrapped. And it was a short bow that could be used on horseback very effectively. Ooh, that's nice. All right, I think at this point, it's time to think about the other end of the wrap. I reach into my tool belt, I take another piece of monofilament, and this piece I'm going to introduce differently because this is working essentially backwards from the other one, if you can dig it. And here we go. I'm going to trap it. So now I've got one more turn for you here. So now I have put a loop underneath, and I'm running up into the bite of the loop rather than down through the feet, or whatever it's called, a standing end. There's words for this. So it's basically the opposite of what I did at the beginning. And what I'm going to do, and it'll be tricky, is get this line through this loop and pull it back under when I'm done. And that's the hard part, and you'll see it in a minute, so bear with me. I have been wrapping since I was about 14 years old. It's always been one of my favorite things to do ever since that wonderful book on the Asiatic composite bow in the Stratford Public Library when I was 12 years old. I also always wanted to build a catapult, didn't you? We're in New Hampshire now, of course, and we have a racetrack up in Loudon, and they've built one. And they throw motorcycles with it. Guys build their own, I guess. There are quite a few fellows who've probably read the same book, and they were kids and built their own catapults, and mostly they throw pumpkins, I think. Oh, look at that. You see how that's coming out to that's about right, isn't it? One more turn. Let's try one more turn for the fun of it. Okay, I think this is going to be it. So now what we need to do is get this end through this loop so we can pull it back. But we have to cut it to do that, don't we? So I have to hold it. And this is going to be tricky. I'm going to start by bending my scissors. Oh, did I put my scissors? See that? See my scissors? I didn't put them back into my tool belt. So I don't have any scissors, but I think I'm lucky. I have here in my tool shelf a knife. So I'm going to use the knife. And I may as well cut it in just about the right... No, it doesn't... Well, I'm going to have to... No, I'll just cut it long. Oh, scary, scary, scary. Okay, now this has to go under here. All right. Like that. And that still has to be extremely tight. And I pull it to hold it. Let's get this even tighter. Oh, no swearing, no swearing. This is going to hurt my finger. And I think I got it. Great. Now we wrap the pliers. I can actually put it down. Now we can wrap the pliers, just the right pliers. The right pair of pliers is really important. You want them to be very good pliers. So I'm going to squeeze and wrap and squeeze and wrap and squeeze and wrap and get those pliers right up there. And then I'm going to use the pliers. Watch now. And we're done, except for this stupid tail. What do we do with the stupid tail? This is very tricky. We take a very sharp knife. This is an American buck, which I have, I love the steel, and I've reground this blade into what's known as a drop point, which is what whittlers use. And I'm going to run that blade sideways right down the string and turn it exactly parallel. The spoon is wrapped.